Hi, Anna.
Hello. Hello.
Thank you for taking the time. If you want to first introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my political group is the Greens EFA, and then I sit in different committees. So I'm part of the Committee on Agriculture, but I'm also, and this is called a substitute, but a member of the Committee on that is about civil rights, and one about women's rights.
Okay, nice. And yeah, so today the focus is going to be on your work of the in the Committee of Agriculture and Rural Development. So, in general, what have you been working on lately, and what does your day-to-day work consist of in the committee?
So in the Agricultural Committee and Rural Development, we talk about everything that is related to food and agriculture. It's a big topic here in the European Union because a third of the budget goes to agriculture. So it is a topic that is heavily
Hmm.
debated. And I myself focus on several topics. I focus on healthy food. I think it's important that we in the EU all have the ability to buy healthy food, such as more fruits and vegetables, less salty, less fat food. I work on sustainability, on circularity, and creating a food system of the future. Because what I feel right now is that if we want to create a food system that is healthy and sustainable, we really have to look at our dependence. For example, the EU is very dependent on the import of soy, of fossil fuels,
Hmm.
of fertilizers, and we have to think how can the system looks like if we are less dependent on these imports. That's what I'm working on, and very concrete files, because in the European Parliament we often work on legislation, and I have worked on legislation concerning contracts for farmers. Something very different on what we call what was called the veggie burger ban. Whether the
Yeah,
name veggie burger was
I think
allowed or not,
everybody has heard of it. Maybe I will.
yes,
Yeah.
that was a big fight. And currently, I'm working on legislation concerning pesticides.
Ah, okay. That sounds very interesting. You
It
want to
is.
explain, like, briefly what it is about and maybe also which European countries it affects the most?
Which one of those three?
Yeah, the pesticides.
The pesticides.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. So, what we see right now in the EU is that there's a wish to use less conventional pesticides, conventional chemical pesticides, because they are often harmful for the nature, for the
Hmm.
environment, for our water quality, but also for people. They can be harmful. We see that people get sick. They, for example, people have the illness of Parkinson. So we want to get rid of those harmful pesticides, and instead we want to move towards more green alternatives. And they have a name. They are called biocontrol solutions.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Yes, and biocontrol solutions are those alternatives, but there's a big issue, and that is that it can take up to 10 years for those green alternatives to enter the market.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
that's.
something has to change here. It has to become easier for those alternatives to get onto the market. And that's what I'm advocating for and I'm working on. And this will affect not just one country in the EU, but all European countries.
Hmm. Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, so you briefly already mentioned it, but a little bit change of topic. So innovations, right, in the tech world, like things change in the seconds. But what when a food innovation actually works, so not just like on paper or like in a PowerPoint presentation, how long does it take to reach like the real farmers and other like professions or people working in the agriculture sector and can benefit from it?
So innovation is there's a lot of innovation in the
Hmm.
agricultural sector, I would say. Very broad. It can go from better integrated pest management to innovation in greenhouses, but also innovation in different products. And I can zoom in on maybe two large innovations that I work on,
Yeah.
and the innovation of plant-based foods, so meat alternatives, and innovation of on pesticides. Because both of them, if you want to have an alternative pesticide or if you want to have an alternative for meat, those new products that often startups work on, it can
Hmm.
take up to 10 years before they enter to the market,
Yeah.
because every new product has to be approved by what we call the European Food and Safety Authority. It's a European body, and they make sure that everything that enters our market is healthy and not harmful for the environment. So this is amazing because of
Yeah.
that, in the EU we have very high standards, the best standards I would say in the world, but it is also a complicated process. So we see that a lot of startups or companies working on these innovations struggle, because then, for example, imagine you have a great idea, you want to bring your alternative pesticide on the market. You need to find funding for more than 10 years. So whether it's private capital or public money, to sustain your practices for 10 years. And that is long. And not so a lot of startups face this the valley of death, where investors don't want to invest anymore because it's taking too long, and then their innovation is killed. And this is an issue because in other countries outside of the EU, for example, the US or Singapore or Brazil, sometimes it only takes 2 years for companies to get new products onto the markets. And we also see that those companies are often relocating. They're moving towards the US or Singapore. And because of this, the innovation that we have in the EU moves elsewhere. And I think this is a shame because it harms our competitive advantage.
Yes, of course. If you could pin it, I think it's difficult to pin it down on one factor, but like, what are the factors that it takes like 10 years? Is it like regulatory, or like which other factors are also like influencing this year, like this span?
I think yes, it has to it's mainly regulatory and a lack of capacity.
Okay.
So the process is that if you have a new product, you have to go to a member state, and the member state has to say, yes, I believe in your project, becomes your sponsor. Then you have to go to the European Food Safety Authority, and after your product is approved there, you also have to get it approved in the member states. So there's all these different steps. And the European Food and Safety Authority, when they get your file, when you hand in your project, they cannot give you advice immediately. They have to really review the whole file, and then they can give a judgment. Although if you could get some advice before you submit your proposal, and then the EFSA, that's how they're called, can say, oh, here are some weaknesses, look into it, and then come back to us. It would make it so much easier. So this plus EFSA has so many requests, and they don't have the capacity to look at all the requests. So I think it's those two main things. The process should be simplified, especially for products that are sustainable. So if they have, if we know they will contribute to a net zero Europe, or they're better for the climate, they should get priority.
Yeah.
Plus, we could make more staff available and strengthen EFSA to go through these applications.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, thanks for explaining that further. And now if we would like switch to gene editing, which is also a major topic. And if you say, okay, in the last 2 to 3 years, which innovations were already implemented, or what was like very memorable for you, or like what's already like in the not in the coming soon like section, but like in the actually applied section, or like
Yes. So if you look at genetically modified organisms or new genomic techniques, so all different techniques where we change the DNA of something, this is a controversial topic in the EU. Because there are some worries of people of traceability. How do I know if something that I eat or use is the DNA is changed if I don't want to eat it? What about food safety? But the rules in the EU are so strict that I am not worried about our food safety. However, because the rules are so strict, we don't see any products on the market yet concerning agriculture and food based on this. So it is often used in medicines. In medicines, there's a lot of GMOs, but in food and agriculture, not yet. But outside of the EU, it is. But I visited a lot of breeders, so plant breeders. So they working on new seeds, and it's in the research phase. A lot is happening. For example, to make potatoes more resistant for some to not to survive certain fungus, or to make them more make the plants better suited for droughts, for floods, etc. So knowing that our climate is going to change and that we will face more droughts, more floods, etc., I do think it's amazing that we can alter the DNA of a plant so it's more resistant to this. And that is what I've already seen in all those research centers and companies. And I think it will help us a lot in the future. And I think the worries that people have are not always founded in research. It's more, we don't know what's going to happen. We're not so much. It sounds creepy, that you alter DNA, but this
Yeah.
is what plant breeders have been doing always, but then more in a conventional way. And now we can do it more precise in a lab, with more precision and more safety. So I think it will, in the end, benefit us a lot.
Yeah, talking about collaborations or also looking at other countries, like about their processes. You've also mentioned that you and your colleague traveled to Singapore, right?
Hmm.
To yeah, to work on these matters together. And if you would say, okay, is this about sharing knowledge, or also making sure we don't all reinvent like the same tomato differently? If I'm like
Yes.
pinning it down to one example.
Definitely. So I traveled to Singapore because it's a fascinating country. It's a very small island, and only 1% of their land is fit for agriculture. So they have this major question. For example, if a war is going on, if something happens, then their food imports is threatened. So they want to be more independent, and they're suffering from a lack of proteins for their society. So they need proteins. Here, especially in the west of Europe, we eat a lot of protein, so we don't have this issue. But there, they face this issue. Then they said, okay, if we don't have arable land, what do? We can invest in clean meat, so cellular meat. So what they did is they made money available for research, so that the best researchers of the world would come to Singapore to work on cellular meat. They also created these places where people can experiment with new techniques. They build upskill facilities, because if you have a new product that is entirely new, you also need the facilities to expand your product, but that's not so easy. So they built these facilities. They had marketing campaigns. So I think they created this whole ecosystem for this new innovative food processes to flourish. What I see happening in the EU is that we often say, hey, we have the best universities. We should excel in this. Not always knowing that in Singapore, there's one of the best universities in the world. And we should collaborate more. I also met the former minister of the Netherlands on health, who is now also teaching in university there, and he says there's so many missed opportunities if we don't collaborate as universities, etc. So yes, it is for collaboration, but also it was for me to learn how do they create this whole ecosystem where innovation can thrive, and can we take some lessons from this and advocate for this in the EU as well. And that's what we did.
Okay, nice. Interesting also. Yeah, is it I think it's called something like NHUS in Singapore, right? Which is,
Exactly,
yeah, which
yes.
is the university.
Yeah.
And also if you look at like other countries, which are interesting to you, or also where do you see potential to like work together or like to collaborate?
Well, if you look specifically on food innovation, the US is interesting, Brazil is interesting, but also, and you might not expect it, but China. What we see now is that China launched a 5-year plan on food and innovation, and they are very ambitious in what they want to achieve. So, what I fear a bit is that if we don't take this seriously, then China will be the front runner in food innovation and new pesticides and novel foods in the future. So I think we should collaborate with them, but also be mindful that if we don't if we don't take this seriously, they will become better at this. But there are also some risks that we have to take into account, and that is that food safety standards in countries outside of the EU are not as strong as ours. So I think we should not forget about this. It's not just a race. I think we can be very grateful that we have such high food standards, and we should not lose them or get rid of those standards.
Yeah, that's very important indeed. And like now on to another topic about like vegetarians and vegans. So what are like some current like innovations that are being worked on or also have been? Yeah, I mean there was also like the debate about if a veggie burger can be called a burger. I don't know like the recent news about it. Do you know? And yeah,
So I think there was a time in the EU where we saw a lot of potential before Corona, especially
yeah, okay,
in plant-based foods. And during Corona, people went into old habits and they
yeah,
started
okay.
eating more meat again. But still, the European Commission, the European Commission just released what they call a protein strategy. So
Mm-hmm.
that was last week, in which they stressed the importance of more plant-based foods. So it's meat alternatives, but also eating more fruits and vegetables because it's better, it's healthier for ourselves. 1 in 2 people in the EU is overweight, so we have to change our diet, and it's better for the earth because it's less. There will be less emissions. So they are acknowledging the need for this, but they're not really coming up with big proposals to change our diets, because what we see happening in the European Parliament, especially, is that there's a big push against this transition. The topic of healthy food is very much polarized and used as a stick to hit progressives, saying, "Oh, you want to define what is on our plate, although I want to choose myself what is on my plate," which I fully agree with. I think not the whole world has to be vegetarian. I think we should eat more diverse, and we should have better options. Uh, better options, and the EU should take care of this. So I would love to see from the EU some proposals on education on diets, in helping farmers who grow fruits and vegetables, that we especially promote them, that we make sure that in canteens, in schools, etc., there's healthy food there. And those are all policy measures that we can take. But it's going to be tough in this political climate, because you saw that instead of promoting plant-based foods, there's now a ban on certain words. So we cannot say vegetarian chicken or vegetarian bacon anymore. Well, bacon, I think, is allowed actually. But meat names and meat cuts, it is forbidden to use those words for vegetarian alternatives. And I think this is a shame, because we know that people who want to transition to eat a bit less meat, they often buy, okay, vegetarian nuggets or something like this, because they know how to use it in their diet, in their recipes. So I think it's a missed opportunity that this is happening. But if I may add something more, I do see
Sure.
that still companies are progressing a lot in alternatives. For example, 2 years ago, I visited this company, and they're called Those Vegan Cowboys. And what they do is that they make an alternative for the enzyme that gives cheese the real cheese flavor. And they're almost there, so they can create perfect cheeses that taste the same. And if they do so, we could have different, like those cheeses where there's no cow needed for, on our pizzas, and that can reduce the pressure that we put on the environment a lot.
Okay, that's also nice that you're like actually visiting the companies to get like a sense of how it is going. Also, like another question again, I don't know if this is your area of expertise, but also like when I talked to about friends, because when I said like I have an interview with you, they were also like interested in why, the like from vegetarian or like vegan products, the list of ingredients is so long, and why there are like already like still so many like substitutes, and if it's gonna change in the future, because like the more like it is added like substitutes there are, the less healthy it is. But do you know it
Yeah.
or?
So there has been a major development in plant-based foods already in the last years. Before, plant-based alternatives, so the meat alternatives used to be quite salty and not always very healthy. This changed a lot because the people who produce those products, they also see that people won't buy them if they're not healthy. So the amount of salt is reduced massively, sugars reduced massively. So by now we see that often those products are healthy. And there are additives, but in meats we also have additives. And an additive is not always bad. There's a big stigma on them that it is not healthy, but it can also be added vitamins or something. So it's not always bad. And I think it's mainly the stigma that we have there. If you want to eat more vegetarian or vegan, you yourself can also eat more lentils and beans. But the issue is that people don't often know how to cook them, how to use them in their recipes. So of course I would say experiment more yourself, like make your own bean burger or something. So you don't always need those highly processed alternatives. But we also people have to, or companies cater to the wishes of consumers. And people often want something that is that they can just buy in the supermarket after a long day of work, bake for 5 minutes, and then they're done. So yes, I think there's multiple ways to look at it. Yes, it's always better to buy fresh products or boil your own beans. But these products that are on the market are getting more and more healthy.
Yeah, it's definitely also maybe about like education and like just clarifying some stigmas around it or
Absolutely.
misthoughts. And yeah, talking about the future. So where do you also experiencing on the day-to-day basis in your work, where do you see the future of novel discoveries in the food and agriculture area? And we briefly talked about it. How can it be accepted by the society or the people more? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think what I see happening is that innovation is going so fast. For example, with these alternative cheeses, that I think we cannot stop it, and it is the future. Companies will also see that if you have these alternatives, you can, at the end, they're often cheaper, more healthy, with less climate impact. So I think companies will either way change towards those alternatives. The If we want to make it succeed, we have to do some things. First, we have to collaborate with farmers, because novel food should not be standing against farmers. Because also, if you create, for example, a plant-based burger, the products don't come out of thin air. They have to be produced because the ingredients have to be grown by farmers. So let's look at how these novel foods and farmers can work together and can create opportunities for both. That's one. The other thing is that money has to be made available for this innovation, not just money for research, but also for upscaling. We have to, in the EU, build those facilities where food innovators can expand their product, because we see too little of those. We cannot assume that people just change their diet overnight. So a lot has to be still done, research and food education on the topic of novel foods. If not, I don't think it's going to work. That's what we saw in Singapur. They invested a lot, but not so much on the cultural side of food and how people use it in their diets. And because of this, the uptake of the product is not so high. And then I think those farmers growing new protein crops or innovators working on novel foods should also have a first push. They need, in the first years, they should be helped. So we have to give them funding so they survive the first years. And we can do this also by working on public procurement. So saying that, if food is bought in hospitals and schools, at least this amount has to go to healthy foods or novel foods. So it's not one solution. If we manage to work on all these different different topics, then I really believe that the future of food can be more sustainable, healthy, and novel foods definitely have a role to play there. One more thing to add, there's also this big consumer organization, and they found out that consumers are not so hesitant. They say if food alternatives are healthy and tasty, we're definitely willing to try them. So I think this cannot be an excuse. We cannot put it on the consumers, but to get there, we just need active, proactive policies on all those different fields.
Okay, super. That's it. If you don't want to add anything, then yeah. I'm thanking you very much for your time, and get well soon. And yeah, have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
And talk to you next time. Bye bye.
Next time. Bye.